Hey, what's up, viewer? Welcome back. This is the Nebulous Live Development Creation Series, and this is going to be hours 4, 5, and 6 of Day 19. Unfortunately, my cat is still trying to get in, even though she can't come inside because she keeps messing on the floor. So she's gonna have to be outside, what can I tell you? So I'm sorry if she starts to drive you nuts, because she's driving me nuts a little bit, to be honest with you. Alright. So, quick thing here. One issue I was having earlier was the fact that I wasn't able to get these panels to show up. So I put two threads on the forum in separate UI categories, and I've yet to get a response for either. So there is a good shot that I am just going to have to bite the bullet and create UI elements that manually update every single time the camera changes its position. And if I do that, I can pool them, and it will just be a handful of them at any time. And the overhead shouldn't be too bad, even though it has to happen every time the camera moves, which is also not too bad because I think there's an event for like camera position has changed, or I can make one, so we'll see what happens. So the other thing no, I think that's the only thing that's tentative. So I'm probably gonna give it another, probably at least sleep on it and see if anything emerges after sleeping on it. But if nothing emerges after sleeping on it, I'm very likely going to just manually build those dang panels, because the stars, I'm rather sure, are going to have to get even smaller to be more sensible within the space they're given. Therefore, I'm going to have to make these UI panels. Just gonna have to do that. So in the meantime, then, there is one pretty quick and easy thing I can do. It doesn't look like my mic's picking up the cat too much, so it might actually be fine in that regard. And look at that, we've got our good old trusty friend of the 20-second play mode start back. Okay, so the one thing I want to add here is I can pan the camera and zoom the camera. But what I cannot do is rotate the camera around a focal point. So I'm kind of getting the idea to have, like, I guess basically the easiest way would be to hold right click. And if I hold right click, then all of the camera controls stay on the mouse, and I don't have to switch to the keyboard. So the idea would be that if the camera, or if the player is holding right click, so if right click is down and the mouse is moving left or right, what essentially happens is the camera moves left or right, and then as soon as it moves left or right, it does a look at on whatever the focus is. So if there's no selection, that's just like the center of the galaxy. If there's a nebula selected, it could rotate the nebula. And it's the same thing if you're actually in a system. Yeah, she's coming to get in. She ain't getting in though. The second I let her run out, she goes upstairs and she craps on the floor, and it pisses off my parents, so I can't let her inside. I'm sorry. I want to let her inside, but I can't let her inside. Not good timing. The cat box is clean too. It's not like I don't know what's up with her. I think I need to take her to the vet or something, but whatever. I need to stop letting her distract me right now. So, okay. Let's see here. So I don't want to do it like this, but I guess I have to go through the... And I don't even want to go through this, to be honest with you. So I'm going to try something off of the bat here. And I'm just going to add a new script to the camera, to wherever I was doing camera code. And more or less, I'm just going to add a... So we've got pan, zoom camera. I'm going to try doing a rotate camera that does not use this, because it's ghastly. I can just make it. I can just make a system that. I can just make a system that. Not a system technically, but I can just make a mono behavior that will rotate the camera using inputs. I can guard my own inputs. Oops. Oh, and look at that! It opened it without me holding control. Weird. It's not supposed to do that technically. Oh, and it didn't. So let me close all these windows. Let me jump back over here. And it did make the script. Okay, so let me jump in the script. So more or less, what I'm trying to do here is and I can't remember if this word will work or not. Oh, I can't write it for you though. I basically have to use update. So if I'm trying to remember how I did this. So if, let's see here, mouse, nope. So if input dot mouse and I think this is maybe button number 1 for right click. So if the mouse button is down, so real quick, let me debug log if it is actually working or not. So if I click on main camera and I add the rotate camera script, and then I hold right click. Okay, so it is right clicking. So left click is nothing, zooming is nothing, middle click is nothing, it's just right click again. So that's correct. So next, if this button is down, camera.main, we don't have to do that, we can just say transform dot translate. Oh, you know what? Translate, and we're going to translate to the right of its own space. And then right after that, oops. And then, oh, this is actually a little trickier. But more or less, we're taking current active, it's like a current active selection. We're just looking at whatever the current active selection is, basically. So to do that, we will have to, in fact, actually use the start method. And we are going to need to grab our current active selection data. Do our atypical player data here. If I can type it, of course. So game object find with tag player data. And then current active selection data equals player data, get component, oops, not transform, get component. current active selection data. And then from here, we in fact have to come in here and do a couple things, but the basic idea is to say current active selection data dot current active selection dot transform. And I think I can also just say position as well. And this is actually a really cheap way to do a rotation, because it forces it. It winds up being a lot better than a certain other solution I worked on like a long time ago, where it was like a 60-line function to like make this work. So, but doing it like this forces the camera to only rotate on one axis, and basically it can't rotate up and down. However, there's a couple problems here, which is that this only happens if current active selection data dot current active selection is not equal to null. So if there is a current active selection, then in fact the camera will rotate. Else the lookout value is actually just vector 3.0. Which is actually I'm not sure if that's going to work, because what's going to happen here now is that it is going to force the camera to turn around if I deselect something. Alright, let's just give it a shot here. So there's one other thing, which is that it needs to rotate by time at delta time. That's only if the mouse button is down, which is incorrect. Another thing that has to happen is I have to gather a float for the X move value on the mouse. So what, like input dot axis. I can't remember exactly. I think maybe it's mouse X. I'm going to have to double check that. Sorry, one second, I'm just closing these tabs real quick. So, okay, I'm trying to remember how do I do this again? It's under project settings. Input. Is it mouse X? I think so. So let's give mouse X a shot. And more or less, that's going to have to come up here. So we've got like float mouse X, or X move value, basically. We just make it 0f for now. And then we can make this float. And it's going to be whatever the mouse X axis is. So we come in here and say times X move value. And in the long run, we could even set this up to do Y transformations as well. And we could actually maximize the Y transformation. So this is open to some vertical movement also in the long run. So this is the first part of the system. However, no matter what axis, I'm just going to see if this works first, and then I have to differentiate it between moving left and right. And then one more thing I need to do actually is probably, I should probably well, apparently I can't find camera data in the solution. Okay, there it is. So I'm going to have to come in here and add a camera rotation speed, basically. So where's the... So public float array, rotation, add adjusters, public float, current camera rotation adjuster. And then I'll have to tweak the values as I go here, but it'll rotate by, so it's going to move right by delta time, the move value, and then it's going to need camera data, whoops, see data, camera data. And look at that, it came in handy that I gathered the component like that. So now we have the camera data, and we need to come in here and just say times, oh, you know what? I do have to do this, camera data dot current camera zoom adjuster, and then I'm going to have to go into my trusty dusty enter and exit codes. And in the place where it changes this, I've just got to do this at each of these, basically. So we'll copy this line here, and then we've got to go to the other 5 places where we can enter, exit, or exit. Oh, it's only 3 other places, okay. Alright, and let's see here. So, enter star system from Nebula. And we're doing basically the same thing here, except for we are changing it to the star tier. And camera data is, of course, capitalized in this instance, which, was it really lowercase in the other one? I guess it's just because it's, okay. So sure, it is. Alright, so we've got that, we've got entering this, and we have exiting the nebula to the galaxy, which is just going to do the same thing here. Capital C, and then galaxy. So that one's good, that one's good, I think this one's good, and this one is about to be just fine and is now fine. Okay. So we have that set up. Although one thing I'm forgetting off the top of my head is, where does that get initialized the first time? So if I go to my player data and I look at camera data, and I'm just kind of double checking if that's alphabetical. Current, okay, it's going to need 3, no doubt, and we'll have to tweak them, but, so I guess we can start with 100, 10, and 1. But I don't remember where I am initializing these values. So let me see here. If I enter play mode, I think these 2 get initialized. And somewhere they do get initialized, but I've forgotten where that is. And they just, no, that's, well, maybe, hold on. No, it's not there. I guess I could effectively just oh, maybe they are initialized in the other camera values. Let me just double check that. So zoom camera, does it set its own thing? Okay, good, it does. Alright, so I guess that'll work. So it's like we're basically taking this here and we're saying, and it's in start. Okay. So on start, we're just initializing this to say galaxy tier by default, makes sense. This is rotation adjuster. And oh, whoops. And I screwed it up there. Okay. Auto completed incorrectly. Or I typed it wrong, I'm not sure which one. One or the other. The default's galaxy tier. Whoops, and I need to switch this to rotation adjuster. Dang it. I was hoping the copy paste would serve me better than that. Okay. So now we're looking at, basically, I think it's set up to be variable now at multiple tiers. So let's take a look here. So if it's set to default, so let's just take a look. Alright, so if I'm in here, there's no active selection. If I hold right click and I move this, we are seeing slight rotation. Ever so slight of rotation. It's very, and it's actually, oh, look at that. It's actually, look at that. Now that I'm looking at this, it's actually working better than I thought, because I was under the impression I was going to have to do an if statement for going left or right, but actually that's getting handled by the input axis being negative or positive, so that's actually nifty. So in that case, let's adjust the values. So let's jack them up by 100 times. See how that looks. 100,000 or 10,000 is close to these two. Alright, and it's backwards, but it's working. It actually can be a little faster, probably. Ten times faster? I guess we better take a look here. Alright, so it's backwards, but there is a functioning rotation. Now the issue is that if I try to pan the camera at the same time, it does in fact do both, weirdly. So I'm probably going to change it to like, okay, so I actually have a certain way that I want to do that. I want to say, so if input.get mouse button down 1, I have to say transform.get component, and in this instance I want to get pan camera, and I want to set active, set active enabled equals false. And by the same token, I also want to say zoom camera is false. And then if the mouse button goes up, oh. Now I tried this before and it wasn't actually turning off the component, but let's give this a shot. So the idea would be that it just cannot pan or zoom while rotating, is the idea. So let's take a look here, because that's going to cause issues. So see, panning, rotating, I have to make sure that this doesn't go backwards. Oh, that was a little weird. So if I panned it over here and then I try to... Very weird. So I like rotated pretty far, and then I click pan. Oh, it's kind of fine, but if I pan it and then I... So that's not correct for some reason. So, I am not sure why that's happening. It's screwing up something. And let's take a look at the camera. So, if I click zoom, it does turn them off. And I'm going to change one thing really quickly, which is I'm just going to swap this to left so that way it rotates correctly. The other problem is that for some reason the like missing a parameter here or something. Let's just like to feed it up. I mean, so that's weird. It is, there's a slight side effect, some kind of side effect where it's resetting the position of the camera whenever I rotate it, basically. Or if I try to pan it and then rotate it or something like that. Oh, you know what though? That input is different, isn't it? Because it's set on the input manager. So if I pan and then rotate it, oh, you know what? The first thing it does is it looks at. So I guess what's happening is that I would almost need the panner to look at. Alright, so I understand now. I understand what's happening. Basically, if I move the camera over here, the first thing it's doing when I hold right click is it actually is looking at the center like I want it to. So that's actually correct behavior. And look at that, it's still zooming in even though it's not supposed to be. So it won't pan. Looks like it's not panning, but it is zooming still. And that's not correct. So let me see here. Player, main camera. Yeah, I mean, zoom should be turned off unequivocally. And it actually looks like it's part of the... So the reason it's happening is because, excuse me, the zoom camera is running off of this event. And I don't really want it to do that anymore. All I really wanted to do is run this loop. No, I don't even want it to run the loop. All I wanted to do really is run the translate code. Okay, so basically, very similar to this, except for we are turning off pan camera and rotate camera. And we are doing that on mouse button, I think it's mouse button number, oh, zoom is, can't remember. Mouse scroll wheel. Okay. Okay, so it's like input.get access. Mouse scroll wheel. It has to be spelled exactly correctly. Is not equal to 0. Oh, you know what though? It's just not going to work exactly. I don't think this is going to work exactly correctly. Because if I get the axis, the problem is that the wheel is free during micro instances. So if it's equivalent to 0, we want it to re-enable these potentials, but the problem is that theoretically the zoom is stopping for an instant, kind of. So I might have to get more elaborate with this one, but the idea is to do it like this, and then I guess I can actually say else if here. Oh, except for it's not very happy about that. Oh, okay, fix itself. I wonder if I can do that here too. So if the mouse button is not down or held down, it would have to run this. That's a mid. It saves that check every single frame. Yeah, darn it. The scroll. I think the zoom system is a little. Maybe, you know what? I think zooming during panning and rotating is fine, because you're keeping the same perspective. So I'm kind of under the impression that I should say, honestly, I could probably just not even worry about this one. Oh, but I have to do it like this so I can, well, no, I'm not disabling it. So I'm just going to actually revert this for now, because I think it's okay to zoom while panning. And I think it's okay to zoom while rotating. So the real one, the real culprit then would be this shouldn't run. Oh. Well, wait a minute, hold on. I don't mind it zooming, but I don't want it to pan, so let me just double check this. Okay, so I can pan, and if I rotate, okay, so I'm not panning anymore while rotating. And I can zoom while rotating, and that's okay because it keeps the same frame, basically, so that's not a big deal. So we're looking at about, and I can't really pan and zoom at the same time because the mouse, I mean, they're using the same button. One's the push and one's the scroll, so it's kind of handling itself in that regard. So I guess it's okay at this point. The only issue is that little janky initial look. That's kind of lame. Oh, another thing I need to test is if I have an active selection and then I start to rotate, it works. So that works. I can like zoom in theoretically on the nebula and rotate around it. Whoops. I broke something though, look at that. Wow, it like really screwed up there for some reason. So at 8,000, what the heck? Why is it saying? Oh, it's at 20,000. 30,000, 60,000. Dang. It's just way too far away. Look at that. I had to cap the zoom then, if that's true. Because it screwed up. It did screw up. It broke it. That might be one more reason why I have to scale down everything. Anyway, complete global scale down. So let me see. If I click this, okay, it's not breaking it now. But if I zoom out, it eventually breaks. Apparently. All right, so this time it's not breaking, but it does have the capacity to break. I have to keep that in mind. So it just zooms forward, and it actually screws up the angle. Oh, and it's still the active selection. So I actually kind of want to add the ability to do a little bit of a vertical rotation. Alright, so I guess I didn't really need to mess around with that too much. The other thing I could do is I could force the camera to just rotate around. Well, it's nifty to be able to select an active selection. And if I were to rotate around it in particular, that's still nifty, I'd say. What I want to add, though, is a slight up and down adjuster, basically. And how do I do this? Because the main issue here is that excuse me, I need to consider this. More or less it's gonna look like this. There's a problem with this approach though. Okay, so this will in fact move the camera, quote unquote, up and down, but the issue is that I don't want it moving up so far that it will cross the top point of the thing, basically. Dang it, so how do I do that? Actually, I'm not sure how to do this. It has to stop transforming at some point. But I'm not sure how to measure it exactly. Okay, so the idea that's coming into my head is some kind of angle. So let's see here. Maybe float, current, vertical angle, basically. And more or less, if this vertical angle is I think I need to use a dot product. I think that'll work. If I use a dot product from so I need to double check real quick. Dot product is something that easily slips my brain here and there. I know it gives you a value between 0 and 1 depending on the angle of the thing, but okay, so I think this is close, but what range am I looking for here? Okay, so I'm not, or maybe let me try the cross product instead. Maybe I'm getting these math incorrect. This might be better. Excuse me. Okay, so I don't know. The dot product will tell me where it'll tell me like where a okay, so the problem is that the okay, so I don't know if the cross product will help because I don't think I need a perpendicular angle here. Kind of what I need, honestly, is like I just need the angle from camera position I need the angle from like the focal point I basically need the angle between the focal point and the camera and the base point, essentially. So like if the angle between dang it. The problem is that triangle is an arc. But the idea is that like the sine cosine of the normalized difference see, this is why I wasn't even going to consider adding this rotation yet. Kind of for this reason here. But I mean, I'm basically just looking for the angle between 2 points, but then I have to know a particular point, which is It's like almost the dot product somehow. So maybe what if I flip this around and say dot product dang it, it's right there. I'm just having a little bit of trouble here. Let's see. The dot product from the center to the camera needs to be like between some range, basically. I think. So then as long as the dot product is between those values, it should do the rotation, basically. So kind of what needs to happen is like from a focal point to the camera, but at camera Y0 to the camera and it's got to be a vector. So it's like the vector from focal to camera, and then the vector from focal to camera with Y0, and then you dot product that. All right, so that's a little bit involved, but I think it might work. So essentially, pointing in the same direction is as if the camera's Y is 0, which means 0 exists at exactly up and exactly down. So essentially, we're trying to cap it between like 1 and positive 0.7 and negative 0.7, and that gives 30 degrees up and down. Okay. Allow me to reposition my chair here now that I've properly contemplated on this. What can I say? Sometimes you have to lay back for some hard work. Oops, sorry, did I just think that pseudonymic engineering math is hard work? Yes, I did. Thank you very much. Alright, so I think I can do this now. I think I have a good idea of how to do this. So the first thing we need to do then is go into our, camera data, and we need to add a new variable which is the vertical rotation buffer. Or, yeah, I assume it's called buffer. Padding buffer, whatever. So public float vertical rotation buffer. And I'm going to add a range to it. That way it's more or less not able to, and actually I want to say that 0.1 to 0.99. That way it never ever touches the top or the bottom, because that creates a weird condition where it will not exactly work correctly. And it might not even work correctly anyways, due to how the rotation works, but we'll have to fiddle fart with it and see what happens. So now we're looking at rotate camera, and we have some kind of vertical rotation buffer. We have to okay, so there's vector 3, focal to camera, and there's vector 3 focal to camera with 0 y value, basically, with 0 y. So to do this, we have to come down here and go like this, and we're going to move these two down, and we have to say if current vertical angle is less than, oh wait a minute, yes, is less than, and we have to say 1 minus data, camera data dot vertical rotation buffer. And this is going to provide the sensible idea that, so if our buffer is 30%, then anything, oh wait a minute, hold on. So current vertical angle is basically, if our padding is 0.3, we need it to go from negative 0.7 to 0.7. Or no, that's not correct, is it? It needs to go from wait a minute. Okay, so now I'm getting a little confused because if it returns 1, then it's actually like it's going to be actually positive either way. So no matter what, oh, but that's, okay, so that's going to change the math just a little bit, because I've got to make it where it's actually got to be greater, doesn't it? Okay, so I think that actually will work, because more or less the filtration happens from the axis value. So we're looking at y move value, determining if it goes up or down, and that is determined, and that is allowed by the current vertical angle being closer to 1 than 1 minus our vertical rotation buffer, which allows us to sensibly say that we want to give it like 30% leeway either way, which is what this math does. So then what we have to do is calculate current vertical angle. Oh. Well, yeah, I'm going to have to well, hold on. Yeah. Or hold on, how should I do this? Dang it. So I'm thinking it's going to break in a certain case here. I'm thinking that there's a rare instance that it could actually... Oh, you know what I could do, though? Okay, so here's the issue. If during this translation the camera just barely moves lower than this value, then it won't even let it scroll up. Okay, so I'm going to have to do something very peculiar here and say I'm going to have to calculate the y move value here. Let's do another if statement. So if y move value is greater than 0, then that means that it's trying to move up. Crap, that's not going to work either, because if it's on the other side, then it's still not going to work. Dang. Darn it, this is not going very smooth. The other thing I could do is make a cosine, or I could use a sine cosine thing to pick an angle, basically. Alright, so my main concern here is that if the... I guess basically, well, I would have to basically calculate current to vertical angle twice, because if the new current vertical angle would break the mover, it shouldn't apply it, more or less. So let me see here. So I want to make a new value called proposed vertical angle. And then and here's where we're going to have to calculate that. So we're going to say proposed vertical angle equals, is it vector 3 dot? Okay, it is. And left hand side, right hand side. I don't remember. I don't think it matters. I think that it's the difference between them, so I don't think that matters. It is here saying forward to other, though. Right. So focal to camera with 0y and focal to camera. Basically. Oh, and does this actually return a float? It does, yeah. So this should... Did I spell this wrong? Oops, I said proposed vertical angle, in fact. My bad. Okay, so this is the proposed vertical angle. Let's probably go back down here. Actually, I'm not sure if this is going to work either, because I'm basing the proposed angle off of the camera's position. Can I do it? Is there a way to do a vector 3 dot translate? There's a move towards. Rotate towards angle. Oh. I guess I could do this. Actually, this might be a lot easier just to do this. Okay, so maybe I just screwed all this up. Oh well. Let's try doing that a little differently. So I still want current vertical angle. I still need the focal points. And if I do it like this, I can get negative angles, which means I can guard it differently. So let me think here. Think. X move is always going to translate. That's not a big deal. The vertical angle, though, is vector 3 dot angle between is deprecated, so we can say angle. And kind of what we're saying is from, did I yank that out? No, focal to camera, or no, focal to camera with 0y, and then focal to camera. And if all right, so this is going to give an angle, and the idea is that vertical rotation buffer. Okay. So the vertical angle is more or less between both of these, so kind of, so negative camera vertical rotation buffer and positive camera vertical rotation buffer, like this. Oh, it's not happy with this. Float, float, float. Oh, you know what I have to do? I have to say and here. And current vertical angle is we want it to be greater than negative and less than positive, if I'm not mistaken. And we probably need to break these up. So let's do something like this. And I'm going to break this out of here, put it in here, pull these out of here. And we're going to say, let's see. I'm going to have to calculate the focal points. But the idea is that if camera data vertical rotation buffer is, okay, so if it is, as long as it is less than the current vertical angle, which Okay, so if the buffer is greater than the current angle, so if the current angle is 25 and the buffer is 30, then if y mouse value, or y move value, is man, I can't believe this is so complicated. The other stuff took like an instant. And if I wasn't trying to cap it, it would be pretty simple. But I am trying to cap it, so there you go. Y move value, input, get axis, Y, mouse Y. So if there's space, so if the buffer is larger than the current angle, I feel like I'm fucking something up. Can't deny it. The idea is that the angle has to be, if the angle is greater than or equal to okay, so let's try it like this. If it's greater than current vertical angle, or let's see. So if the current vertical angle is greater than the buffer, then I only want to do the translation if the y move value is less than 0. Else, if the negative, I don't think I can just say negative, can I? Does this work? I think so. Otherwise, if the negative vertical rotation buffer is greater than the current vertical angle, then more or less it's the same thing, but it can only move up. And I have to shift these to say up. We'll see. Else, I can just move the value. And it doesn't matter in this instance whether or not it is all right, so let's think about this one more time. So the current vertical angle, if it's greater than the buffer, then I only want the translate to occur if the y move value is negative to move it down. And that catches the case where the translation actually throws it above the angle. It'll just cap it out, but leave it to move down. If the angle is not greater than the buffer, then if the angle is... Oh, wait a minute, did I do this math wrong? No, because if current vertical angle is like 45, it is in fact less than negative 30. And in that instance, it can only move up. Else, it can move up or down. Alright, so the last thing we have to do then is calculate the focal points. So focal to camera is actually pretty straightforward. It's actually something like this, isn't it? Oh. Or hold on. We're kind of doing this again, to be honest. So we're saying if the current active selection is not equal to null, then focal to camera in fact equals current active selection data current active selection dot transform dot position minus transform dot position. Else focal to camera equals vector 3.0 minus transform dot position. And let me double check real quick on vectors. So it's other position minus the current. So I think I did it backwards. I do that quite often, actually. Okay, so that's correct then. Or no, wait. Yeah, because I'm going from the focal to the camera. That's where the angle exists. Or no, wait. Focal to the other position, so that actually is backwards, isn't it? Oh. Transform that position minus vector 3.0 is nothing, isn't it? But it still produces a vector, I think. So we'll just have to see if this works or not. And it'll be obvious where it's backwards and whatnot as we go along. So now we have a focal to camera. So either the current active selections current active selection to the camera, or the center of the screen to the camera, or the center of the thing to the camera, because that's where the focal point is going to be. And then we have to just very simply after this set focal to camera with 0y dot y equal to 0. And now we have the angle between focal to camera with 0y and focal to camera. Alrighty. This is going to be interesting, that's for sure. I need to fix that slider to be like 1 to... let's just make it 45 for now. So 0 to 45. Oops. And then set the rotation buffer to like 30 or whatever, and give this a whirl. So we're probably gonna have to like sorry, a little bit of ADHD or whatever, or ADD, whichever one they said I don't have, you know. So let's see here, we've got, all right, so if I'm very careful and I hold the mouse button and I rotate, it is, oh boy, it's working. It's working! It's working! Ah, it's working! Oh my god, it's working! It's fucking working. Fucking G-ball, dude. Like a fucking boss. Okay, sorry, I'm really excited when it works on the first try because this shit sucks sometimes. So let me see if it's actually working all the way and capping at the top. And it looks like it's not. Darn it, it's not working! It's not working! It's actually technically... See, that's why I was trying to avoid it going all the way up, because it does this creepy shit, but... It's almost working. Okay. So excuse my excitement there, but... I think perhaps... And I'm just going to turn on the debugger just to figure it out, but I think probably I just have my... math backwards. Alright, so let me kick on the debugger. Let me pick a breakpoint. How about I guess probably we're just going to go down to like here. And then we will jump in. Okay, so as soon as I move this, it's going to debug. So let's see here. In this instance, mount the X move and the Y move, they're both set to 0 because it didn't actually get to that point yet. So it's not going to have a current active selection. Therefore, it will move to focal to camera. It will do a current vertical angle, which it's saying is 0. Oh. Okay, so I see what I screwed up a little bit. I, in fact, forgot to first say that focal to camera is supposed to equal focal to camera. Now, it should probably actually work correctly. So, it's like, put it in here and see. Or I guess we can say, put it like right here. And does it let it, or? And I think if I move it up, it will. Trigger it. Whoops, it actually broke something. Why really did my camera get like... Yeah, every once in a while that freaking bug happens. But I did change the focal thingy, so maybe I screwed it up big time. So from their shot, if it like flings off the screen, it's like, oh, that could... Man, I don't know why that bug happens. Okay, so this time around we had current active selection is null, therefore focal to camera is this value, and then focal to camera 0y, it already has 0. That's kind of weird. Oh, okay, that's because it gets set down here. It got set down here in the debugger. So the current vertical angle needs to be between -30 and 30, and it's. Oh, you know what? It might be starting at over 30 is the problem. It's bizarrely exactly at 30, strangely enough. So then vertical rotation buffer is 30. Current vertical angle is greater, which means y move value has to be less than 0 for the translation to occur. But it looks like the current vertical angle is correct. So I'm going to turn off the debugger and just test it. And it looks like it's still backwards, but that's easy to fix. Oh, and the reason I think it's backwards is because, like I said, I wanted to change these to up, in fact. Although no, I don't, because the... It felt like the control was correct. Let me see here. I think I might just barely have it mistuned, but I think it's almost there. So let's see, if I try to go down this time, does it actually go down? Yes, it does. But the problem is that... Okay, so it's going up and down properly, but if I hit the bottom... Okay, there it stopped. It stopped and it won't go down. And now it's up and it keeps going up, though, so that's kind of weird. And then once it's up too far, it actually doesn't work anymore. Very, very, very weird. So it'll keep going up, but it will not go down after the angle. So I'm screwing up something just a tad bit here. What am I screwing up here? Okay, so if y move value is negative, which is this, I think. It's working correctly, but my guards are not working correctly. So... And actually, it's technically doing this correctly. And then it's doing one of these correctly because it's going from... It's blocking the transition negative. Okay, so I'm going to have to... I kind of want to come to the code that blocks the up value from occurring, right? Oh, you know what else is that? I'm running this as an else if. What happens if I run it as an if statement? Because maybe I'm... I don't know if that's correct or not, but let's check. Dang it. I guess my celebration was premature. It was like 98% working, but then the 2%'s breaking the whole thing. So, not the whole thing, but... Dang it, but it was actually working pretty close. So let's see, it goes down. And now it's not stopping. And if I go up, it's not stopping. So, And the else if was stopping. That is very interesting. Okay, so down is negative. Times a positive is still negative. Let's see. I guess what I could do is just let the player deal with zooming up too high since it's not broken. Which is going to waste all of that work, though. But if there's some reason the player needs to look at that angle, they can, so... I would still rather just cap it, though, so it doesn't freak out on them. If I can sort this out, it's almost there. So why is this doing this? Let's see, camera vertical rotation buffer 30. And if that is less than the current vertical angle, then as long as the move value is negative, so if the vertical angle is larger than the buffer, it's only supposed to go down. But down times a negative value is positive, so it's going to go up. So I think I have this math wrong. Just with a negative in the wrong spot. Oh. My phone thinks so, apparently. I don't want to just change random things. I want to actually understand fundamentally what I'm screwing up here. So, let's see here. By default, it will in fact move the camera down and block it from going down more. Excuse me, if I mean, it's almost like this is working and this is working, but then once this occurs, it is not, in fact, running. Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, I'm not sure. Let's just try debugging it or whatever. Since I'm not getting anywhere thinking about it. Let's take a look here. So in this instance, if it's less and the y is positive, right? So it's more, it's more, it's more, it's more, it's more. One of these points, it's going to stop, and then when I go up, it should, but it didn't. Yeah, maybe it just stopped at the right point, but okay, so it stops, but it's not giving me my debugger. So it's almost acting like hmm. It's just I know it's just something super subtle here. Right, so apparently negative 30 greater than current vertical angle. So can I move the breakpoint mid-run? Is that possible? It does, okay. So that's negative 30 properly, and this angle is 29 point some odd. So the result of this Boolean is negative 30 is not greater than this angle. Wait a minute, but it looks like the angle is backwards, actually. So I'm wondering if, in fact, I just screwed up the... Yeah, the angle should be negative. No way. No way, is this really happening? Yeah, this is for some reason it's not negative. So it's giving me the positive angle. Dang it. It's not giving me a negative angle. So let me double check then. Let me just make sure that up here it's still positive and not weirdly negative. And it's positive. So okay, so here's the idea. If transform.position.y is greater than 0. Oh, and actually, we can just say less than 0. Then we have to say current vertical angle equals negative current vertical angle. If it's 0, it's 0. And if it's greater than 0, it's greater than 0. Okay. Whew. So that was about to screw things up. Alright, so that should fix the negative angle issue. It should, in fact, fix the problem. So if I go down, it did not fix the problem. And if I go up, oops, well, really screwed up. Oh, it's like that's stuck at the bottom. All right, well, I think probably I just have my vectors backwards. So when I pull it down, it goes up. And then and then it's not letting me go down again. It still has that weird problem. It won't let me go down if I'm above the number. Yeah, I really have this screwed up somehow. Oh, I really screwed it up. So I can go up and down, but once I hit the range, I can't anymore. Yeah, okay, so darn it. I thought that was fixed, but I guess not. Now let's just make sure this is correctly working. And actually I can say this, can't I? I have to bust out the debugger again here. Alright, so I'm going to just really quick swap these around and see what happens. Okay, so that was, well, that really screwed things up. Wow, that's really, really screwing things up for some reason. Really weird. So anyways, let's see. So up, okay, so up stops in the right spot, and down stops, it looks like down stops in the right spot. Okay, so I just had to reverse those two. Except for that really weird start thing. Yeah, every once in a while it just janks. Alright, so that was it. I just had those backwards. Okay. Alrighty. That was weird. So that's kind of weird. It does actually look like I am like zooming out accidentally. Yeah, I'm definitely zooming out on accident, so I can zoom it in, but that's just not as great as possible now, is it? But yeah, it's definitely zooming out. Okay, so I can fix that. Dang, that's like a bazillion extra things just to make the camera go up and down. Alright, but I did swap those values, so the last thing then is I have got to... Man, and this isn't an update loop, it's terrible. So even if I just hold the button, so I can make this more optimal by just making sure that it checks if these changed at all, and then if neither of them changed at all, then don't run any of this. So there's a way to make it more optimal that it does exist. So the last thing that I'm screwing up then is that I need it to like retain its distance, its exact distance from let's say distance from focal point, basically. And on the rotation, we do not want to change the distance from focal point. So distance from focal point is the magnitude of basically this part. So we would say distance, whoops. So let's see, distance from focal point equals focal to camera dot magnitude. And that will give us how far away it is. And more or less, we need to upon looking at, we need to do something which is, man, I'm really gaining the vector math chops here, I tell you what. Okay, so once it translates and looks at, I have to say, I feel like I already did something like this. But I basically have to say transform dot position equals like focal to camera dot normalized times distance from focal point. I think. Whoops. And this is just going to make sure that the rotation sticks. So focal to camera. Oh, that's the focal to the camera, though. But yeah, I think that's correct. Let me try this. Alright, so let's make sure I didn't break anything. And I did, in fact. And it's actually still doing the zoom out, so I screwed it up big time. Okay, so I think what I should do is move this to a different spot, which is like, I think I need to move it here. Wait, hold on. Should I go like this? Okay, so I don't think that's correct either, but basically what I'm screwing up is that I'm getting the, oh, well, hold on, that's correct though. So I need the, or, okay, so this is the original distance. That's still correct, I think. So that's still correct. What I'm missing though is focal to camera's normalization is the old position. And in fact, I need the normalized vector of the new position. So I have to say like focal to camera now equals, I basically just have to run this again, I think. And I have to do a new focal to camera from the new position. Normalize that. And then I guess really quickly I'm going to rename this to original distance from focal point to be more exact. And then what happens here is we have the focal to camera just readjusts itself basically. And this just, I guess it's redundant to put vector 3.0, but technically I'm supposed to, right? To determine the vector, but I guess that doesn't matter. The vector, I guess one thing that could be screwing up is that the vector is backwards. As you're going from okay, so let's try this. Alright, so okay, so it's not broken anymore, and I still cap on the top, I cap on the bottom, and if I just go crazy on it, it's still zooming out on me. Dang it. So that didn't work. Shoot. Shoot. Shoot, shoot, shoot. The only thing I can imagine would be flipping these around. So let me see if this screws things up or not. Yeah, that just breaks things completely, but sometimes it breaks incorrectly. Or sometimes it breaks on some instances, but not on others. Let me cycle the play mode and see. Alright, so now it's just broken. Hooper scooper. So I'm basically doing nothing with this work here. It is in fact okay, so let's see, what the heck is going on here? The theory is correct, but I'm doing it wrong for some reason. So the transform is translating, the transform is looking at, and then the transform and actually let me test something really quickly. So if I have a current active selection and I start rotating, whoa, and broke it hard. Dang. So I screwed that up, definitely. But what if I reverse these? That might break it as well anyway. Dang-o, man, dang-o. It's just a player courtesy to not zoom out against their will. Which is why I'm getting picky about this. So now we do an active selection, and I hold the button. It's not zooming out anymore, but it is definitely not, it looks like it's not in the correct spot. So I check the main camera, it is like way out of position. Alright, so that's screwed up too. So I'm definitely screwing this up somehow. Alright, so another way that I'm envisioning it is to say, maybe I need to say, okay, let me Google real quick here. Vector magnitude. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. That's all it says, just the length of the vector. I guess this vector assumes yeah, I'm rather sure I need both vectors, to be honest with you. So I'm going to try doing something like this. I don't know if this is actually going to make the difference. But some vector out in space assumes that the vector is infinite, right? So like magnitude. And down here it's almost the same thing. I think I have to like this. Even though it doesn't, for some reason it doesn't seem correct. Or it seems redundant, but I think it's just how the data is aligned. So if that's correct, then down here we have to do like the same thing basically. Or inside of here we have to put it in here. Here's not even using this part. And then to the same degree we are saying this. Oops, this. We don't need the focal recalculation. Alright, so let's give this another shot. If this doesn't work, I'm going to have to do the debugger. So test try, let's see if I can rotate without breaking shit. Okay, nothing's broken. Okay, and my up and down is not broken. And if I super fast rotate, does it break? Dang it, it's still freaking breaking. Gosh fucking damn it. Gosh fucking damn it. What if I do an active selection like this? And it's really breaking. Alright, well I'm screwing up something big time, so maybe let me try rotating this around here. Ah, crap. So that's still busted pretty hard. Alright, well. Dang it. So this is irrelevant then. Alright, so I have one more idea. And that idea is to say transform dot translate, and I'm translating forward in self space.self. I need to transform forward by a difference between a new value called, let's see here, so float Alright, what should I call this? Float, 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 float. Float. Gosh darn it, come on, brain, let's go. Let's go, brain, come on. I mean, I guess it's a distance adjustment. And distance adjustment equals and then this is still, let's just leave it like this for now. I don't think that matters though, but okay. So here we're getting original distance from the focal point. And to get a new distance from focal point, and forward times the distance adjustment. But distance adjustment equals original distance from focal point we're assuming that the new distance is further. I just had a thought go through my head that, well, it shouldn't matter, should it? The distances should be the same in that case. Okay, so distance adjustment equals whoops, and let me new distance from focal point minus original distance from focal point. And that gives us a positive value to move forward in self space. But new distance from focal point equals, and we already did this, right? It was, it's the magnitude of the Sorry. Spaced out there. Okay, so now I'm back. Sorry about that. So, the new distance from the focal point is simply and I guess the distance is correct. Oh no, well, I guess this part isn't proving to be correct, is it? But basically this. Except for this one goes down here. I guess let's just test if this works or not. So if this doesn't work, it's debugger for sure. Alright, so let's see if I break things. Okay, no, not broken. And if I rapid spin it, it still is breaking on me. So like I don't know. Debugger time, honestly. Because it's just not working. It's not even running the debugger. Oh, I didn't attach it, my bad. Alright, so let's see here. So, transform to look at. New distance from focal point is 90,000. 75.09. Sounds correct. Original distance from focal point, 90,075.09. Which isn't correct though. It's almost like translate is happening late. But this is actually correct then. So yeah, it's a little strange because focal to camera looks like that. Yeah, I don't know. Alright, so I have to Google something here. So let's see. Unity 3D, when does transform translate take effect? Man, yeah, man, nothing for this. I'm wondering if translate, like, is having issues because it is in... I mean, I asked the exact same question. When does this take effect? Oh. No, I still have my internet. I guess that's not up. Alright, so I guess the easy way to test this is going to be using the debugger, because I am not getting a straight answer here. Alright, so. Oh, it looks like I froze up my editor anyway. Dang, I really screwed that up. Stop the debugger and see if it will... Whoops, looks like I froze my debugger. Okay, good, it's out now. Alright, so I have to test something really quick, and let's... just make this time like times like 10. And essentially what I'm going to do here is say transform dot position So let's see if the translation is taking effect immediately or not. Alright, I'm gonna rerun this. This is just to get into this, so the idea here is if it hasn't changed yet, despite the translate, it will reach this point. That is in fact the goal here. And it's actually translating it every time, which makes sense. So they're not equivalent. Alright, well, I'm screwing up something. So what am I jacking up here? Distance adjustment should not, in fact, be Actually, I just had an idea. And that idea is what if I hardcode this to 0? And only rotate on the x-axis. It still shouldn't matter though, because like, and it should still just be doing the manual readjustment. The idea is that if it moves left and looks at, so let me see. So actually, look. Oh no, it's still broken. Okay, so that's not it. All right, so I have no idea. I am not sure why this is happening. Like, I mean, there should be a new distance. Translation was, in fact, changing it. Man, this is not prototypical, that's for sure. Son of a bee, man, ding. Alright, so there's one thing I'm considering, which is going like this. And yanking out this. This will make it a solid step every single time. And that might, in fact, solve the problem. Because essentially it's like translating at different rates every time. I still don't think this is going to work, though. Like, the problem is still the fact that it's not understanding it's not understanding when it is at a different distance. Oops, and now it's broken anyway. So that made it worse, actually. Oh. Let's take this extra translate out of there, though. Okay, so now is it actually calculating its distance or something? Okay, so I am not sure now. It's actually worse now, kind of. Once again, let's show you if I can... Let's see if that's specific to the y-axis screwing things up or not. Man, it does not like fixed update. It does not like fixed update. Alright, so... just go back to this. Oh, it's still... I don't know, you can zoom in if it screws up. The player's probably not going to mess with that much. More than anything, it is just bothering me that I can't figure out why this is not working. It almost makes me want to take a whole new approach with how I'm doing this, actually. Oh, I see what I'm doing wrong. I'm calculating the original distance after it translates. Derp, de-derp, de-derp, de-derp. Okay, so... So I actually need a vector 3 for original camera position. And before I do this transformation, I have to say original camera position equals transform dot position. And then in here I have to say original camera position and original camera position. That's the original distance. And in fact, how did I originally do this? Because I think it will work now. Originally I had it as a manual position set. So I was just saying transform.position equals instead of translating it, I was just setting it directly equal to what? Like the magnitude of the original distance. Whatever, let's just see if this works. Man, see, one line basically in the wrong spot, and it's like an hour of debugging. So let's see, make sure nothing's broken. And if we go faster, we are now, in fact, I think it's working. Yeah, okay, so I fixed it. Like it's like optically illusioned. Yeah, so like no matter what I do, it's actually okay, good. So that is fixed. See, my logic was correct. I just had one little line in the wrong spot. So now we're doing the same thing here basically. Except for this part is this part. All right, well that was 95% of that complication was literally just adding one extra degree of rotation. So it went from like 5 lines of code to like 55 lines of code. So it was like 10 times the effort, 15 times the time investment. But all the player will notice is that the camera can pan up and down and left to right. Like it's such, the player barely notices the difference. They would only notice if it was missing and think it's just one more thing, but it's not one more thing. It's like 10 times as many things. Which is definitely something that would be cool if the players would understand at a more fundamental level. It would be less frustrating to do this. Okay, so that's not screwed up, and if I select one of these things and I start to move it, okay, so the same effect is occurring. Alrighty. So that's that then. The only thing that would be cooler is if, like, when I select the new one, it would be super awesome actually if it automatically looked at it. So if I clicked on this one, it would be cool if the camera like zoop did like a lerp over the. That would be sweet, actually. That would complete it, basically. So I think I can squeak that in too. And let me double check my timer. How long did I miss my timer? No, it's almost there. I got 6.5 more minutes actually. Dang. So that was I actually for a second there thought I was over the timer because I thought that the 3-hour mark had surely elapsed by now, but no, actually. Which is actually pretty cool that I'm. It's pretty cool that I've got that going on. Because it's messing with my sense of time, which I kind of like that happening right now. It's cool whenever that happens, I guess. Or it's nifty when, like, I think I'm out of time and then it's like an hour faster or something. Which I guess it isn't exactly what happened in that instance, but... Alright, so in the time I've got left here, let's try and... Oh man, but if I lerp the camera... I've got to be able to turn off that lerp, basically. So, let me see here. To do that, I would like to just use a component activation or deactivation. So, how am I going to do this? I definitely need a component called lerp flick camera at new active selection. Ghastly, but technically accurate. So let's see here. I'm probably going to need start, probably going to need update. Probably going to need current active selection data. I'll have to I will have to gather the current active selection data with player data's component, current active selection data, and I don't want to actually have an if with a bool here. I just want to say vector3 dot lerp from Alright, so I've got to make sure I do this just right, but like I need to lerp from current active selection or old active selection position to like new active selection position, right? And then I can say like, okay, so I need like vector3 current lerp position. And more or less what we are saying then is going to be transform.look at current lerp position. And we're just going to do that. But I'm pretty sure we're going to need an iterator. We're going to have to say iterator plus equals time.delta time. There's the timer. We are going to need a I guess we're going to need camera data again. Oops, not that one, no. Oh, whoops, I did the wrong one. Okay. We're going to have to jump into camera data real quick. Or to add a new value. Which is like public float new selection look at transition time. Okay, and then current lerp position equals vector3 lerp, and if I'm not mistaken, we say iterator divided by camera data dot time transition time new selection look at transition time. If iterator is greater than or equal to camera data dot new selection look at transition time, then iterator needs to get set to 0. This thing needs to turn itself off. And I'm getting so specific, so specific. I'm already envisioning a bug where mid-lerp, the player tries to rotate the camera, which is going to force the look at. So I guess the easy thing would be to just force the basically and I don't think zoom camera actually turns off correctly. If the camera can zoom during this, I guess it doesn't matter because it'll look at it, or whatever. If I pan the camera, it will still. I actually don't know if it'll matter because all it's doing is transforming the look at target. And it doesn't care exactly where it's at in space for that. So even if the camera pans, it will just like pan, but then still keep rotating. Same thing with rotate camera. If it rotates, Well, I guess if it rotates, it'll force the look at. I think. So I don't think the pan matters either. What about the rotation? So if I'm rotating the camera, that means the camera is it's going to force the camera to look right at where it's going anyway. So I'm going to yank this out and just set this up. So I guess current active selection data has to have some new values then, doesn't it? So we've got public. Oh, and I wonder if this could just be camera data, actually. I don't know if I need it to be current active selection data. So I think we can run through here. So I'm gonna have to mess around with this another form, but I can say public vector 3 previous active selection position, public vector 3 current active selection position. And this is kind of why I was going to put it in here, because these have to do with the current active selections. But if I leave it in camera data, I don't have to actually mess around with this part. Just gather the camera data. And then more or less it's lerp from camera data dot previous active selection position to camera data current. Oops, sorry. Camera data current active selection position. And as long as I didn't jack up my iterator, this will basically work. So now I have to go into the player clicks selection button. I think that's the monster script I'm looking for. Okay, that's pretty cool. I brought it up automatically. Alright, so I'm sorry, this video is now at 7 minutes over, but I think I can finish this last thing here before I cut this video. Okay, so the idea is that this is actually redundant because I have this in a data value, but I can worry about that right now. Alright, so a little bit of thinking here. Basically, if a current active selection... Okay, so let's see here. So if there's if there already is a current active selection, let me see, do I have camera data set up in here? Do okay. This is one hell of a script. 200 lines. I had a whole game that once I was like 800 lines, the whole thing. It's technically it's 2,000 lines, I guess. All right. So I'm not actually... And this should actually solve the issue as well inside of a nebula. Because it'll just like, from wherever the camera is, it will just look around at what the player clicks on as the active selection. So then the only other issue will be if it zooms in prematurely. In which case I'm going to have to actually mess around with the camera again. So, okay, so that's another thing I have to do. To make this work, we've got okay, so I'm pretty sure here I need to just say camera data dot new previous active selection position equals hit dot collider dot game object, and it's more local, so I'll do that. I don't know if we're optical or not, really, I don't know. Dot transform dot position. Oops, I'm typing quickly. And then once the this is not correct. Excuse me. This is actually current active selection data dot current active selection dot transform dot position, and then it's camera data dot current active selection position equals hit dot collider dot game object dot transform dot position. Now the positions are set. Oh, but that only matters if this is happening, right? Wait a minute. So let me just make sure this is correct. So the previous position is the current selection, and then the current selection position is transform position of the hit. And I guess what I'm tripping on is that else yep, current active selection is null, which means I have to do one thing here, which is I have to set current active so if I deselect and there's an active selection, basically I have to say camera data dot previous active selection position equals So the previous position is current active selection data dot current active selection dot transform dot position, and then camera data dot current active selection position actually is just a vector3.0. And I have to say camera.main.get component. Oops, can I not do that? It says I can. Get component. What the heck was that superiorly ghastly name? Lerp look at look camera at new active selection, yes. Dot enabled equals true. I actually have to do this up top as well. And effectively, so if I hit a new object and I already had a previous object, man, it's just built. I'm finding a couple kinks here, that's all. If I'm panning the camera and I make a new selection, then it just needs to look like, darn it, so that's a little strange. So if I pan the camera, okay, so let's think about this right here first. If the raycast hits a new object, but there was an old object, the old object position gets saved, the new object position gets saved, and then this happens. However, if a new object is hit, and there was not a previous selection, then it needs to pan from the current angle to the new angle, but the problem there is that it's not just looking at the center. So it's almost begging me to make my panner look at the active selection, which is almost like a rotator in its complete own facility, isn't it? It's not technically rotation though, is it? Okay, so the easy thing is just to basically say if there's a new object, look at it. So is there anywhere else where this is at? Nope, that's it. So we haven't looked at it yet here. So the idea is that camera.main dot look at transform dot look at And the idea is to just look right at the new selection. Basically. And then move this out here because I want this set either whether it's a but I can't unless it has to have a current active selection. Here, though, there's definitely going to be one both ways. Alright, so let's give this a shot then. So what were the cases? So if the raycast hits, and there's a selection, oh, I see. That's why I had this here, wasn't it? But I think I can copy it out here too. Oh, but then it's going to set twice. Okay, let's just do that anyway, for now. So if the raycast hits, if there's already an active selection, change the previous and current positions on the camera data and then turn on the camera lerper. If there's not an active selection, the new selection becomes the camera's current active selection position, the collider gets set, and then the camera just looks right at it. And I think there might be one step I could do better here, so we'll have to see how it feels. If there's not a recast that hits, then I've deselected. So if I've deselected and there's a selection, then I want to lerp it back to the center, basically. And then if there's no selection, it doesn't matter. Okay, so there's one kink in this, which is that it's this. It would be cool to just rotate from whatever position I'm at to that position. And I could do that with a quaternion thingy, but let's see if this is broke or not. I need to cut this video anyway, it's 22 minutes over. Oops. Alright, so let's give this a shot, see if it broke anything. Alright, so clicking this should look at it. It does. If I click off it, it should lerp back to the center. It did not. So I screwed up here. Well, I can't believe it screwed up that deep in it. Oh, did I just not put that component on the camera? My bad. Let's give that one more shot. Alright, so clicking on an object will go instantly, which is not correct. Oh, I would like it to transition over, which I can fix, but not this time. If I click off it, it should transition back to the center, and it doesn't. It didn't actually lerp back to the center correctly. And then, what else was there? Active selection to another active selection. Okay, so my lerp is screwed up. Okay, so I need to cut this video. I know there's more work I need to do, and I've got a pretty good idea of how to do it to get these camera transitions set up better, so I'm going to cut the video for now and get back on it later. So I really appreciate it if you've actually watched up to this point, and I'll see you in the next one, so take care.